Hello, and welcome to Feldman Shepherd's Defective Products and the Law podcast. This podcast covers emerging issues and trends in product liability law, with an emphasis on dangerous products that our firm sees every day in our nationwide product liability practice. I'm Alan Feldman, co-managing shareholder at Feldman Shepherd, and your host. Hi, folks. My name is Alan Feldman of the law firm of Feldman Shepherd, and I'm here today with my partners Dan Mann to my right and Ed Goldis to my left. And today we're going to be talking about a product that is known as an Incline Sleeper. It's been in the news lately because of some very significant tragedies that have occurred when infants are placed into these products. Dan, why don't you tell us what an Incline Sleeper is?
An Incline Sleeper is a product that is in the marketplace that parents have been using for infant sleep. It's not a bassinet. It's not a crib. It looks a little bit like sometimes they're designed similar to bouncy seats, but they have a stiffer frame so that they don't bounce, and that they're stiller for the infants, and the infants are placed on their backs. The Incline Sleepers often have some sort of a fastening device to go around the infant's hips that are sometimes used and sometimes not used.
And what's the concept behind the Incline Sleeper? What objective or role was it intended to have, Ed?
The Incline Sleeper as a class of products were first introduced into the market as a way for children to sleep, potentially sleep at least, when they are suffering from acid reflux and had otherwise trouble sleeping on their backs, which is the recommended way that they be placed to sleep.
And the appeal to these products is that parents use them in the living room or in the kitchen, that it's something you can take around the house.
They're portable.
And portable to put your baby to sleep in. So if you're preparing a meal, if you're watching TV, it's a way to have your infant sleeping close by. The thinking is that it would be safer to have your infant sleeping close by. Of course, what we've learned from these devices is that they're not safe at all.
And of course, the Incline Sleeper was effectively invented by Fisher-Price, correct? They introduced the product, we believe, in about 2009, and Fisher-Price is a company with a reputation that is very impressive to many consumers. They make lots and lots of products and toys and other devices for children and infants, and most people associate Fisher-Price with safe products. Most people, I would go so far as to say, would make an assumption that if Fisher-Price is making and selling and marketing this product, it must have been tested to make sure that it's safe for use. But what do the facts show about what testing, if any, took place before this product was introduced into the marketplace in 2009?
I think what we've learned and what the general public has learned a little bit about at this point is that a woman by the name of Chapman who had been a long-time developer, product developer at Fisher-Price, developed the product, and it was the first product of its kind that she'd ever developed. She'd developed other toys before for children and children's products, but nothing in this class of product. And when she designed it, she consulted with a general doctor at the time, but not a pediatrician, not a pediatric airway specialist. And as far as we know, virtually no testing whatsoever was conducted to determine whether this product and this class of products were safe for children.
Now, we, the three of us, and our law firm have been involved in representing parents who have purchased infant products or products intended for children that have caused injury and even death. And there has been a recognized protocol, that's a kind of a big word, but a procedure that is supposed to be followed by all manufacturers before they ever introduce a product, particularly one for a population as vulnerable as babies and children. why don't we talk a little bit about that protocol, that process that every manufacturer should be using before they introduce a product into the marketplace? Dan?
Well, I think there are two things that we want to talk about here. One is the hierarchy of safe design, and second is something called a failure mode and effects analysis, which is part of the hierarchy of safe design. The hierarchy of safe design is something that all manufacturers should consider when designing products, especially infant products that are going to be used by the most vulnerable people in our society. The first step is to evaluate the product and to identify hazards. And with the Fisher-Price Rock and Play and what appears to be this entire class of products, that analysis never took place the way it should have.
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with just introducing the product and see how people like it and whether or not it's safe to use? Safe to use, pardon me.
I mean, it's a recipe for disaster. That's the best way that a product manufacturer can choose if they want to hurt and kill children, which is exactly what happened in this case. You had a company rush a product to design and essentially do no hazard analysis, do no failure mode and effects analysis, where you have to look at the product, how it's used, what the risks are, and you have to actually talk to people who specialize in this field. If you're going to design an infant product, you need to talk to pediatric airway specialists and engineers to make sure that the product can't be used in a way that's going to hurt or kill infants. None of that was done here. And one of the great tragedies about this is that other infant manufacturers saw the Fisher-Price design, and then they basically copied it, and they failed to do their own analysis as well. The manufacturers, at least in one of our other cases that doesn't involve a Fisher-Price rock and play, they called their design a derivative design, which basically is a $3 word for they copied it and they didn't test it. And as a result, what you have here is you have a product, now that it has been studied, that is exceptionally dangerous and defective. And as an aside, we should say this at the very beginning of this podcast. If you have one of these products in your home, you should stop using it now. We shouldn't get to the end of the podcast to make that statement. You should stop using it now. Children should not be placed in incline sleeping products for any reason.
That's a very good point. And it's not just for those of you who own these products in your own homes. If your family, if your friends have incline sleepers, they may or may not have heard about the media reports about how unsafe these things are. Let them know you'll be doing them a great favor, that they have to get these products out of their homes, because it doesn't take long for an infant to get into a position, an unsafe position, and in a matter of a minute or less, that infant can suffocate. And what we're talking about here is a design that is inherently unsafe. It can't be made safe the way these products are, and that's why they have no place in any home.
But one of the things that I guess I didn't talk about was what the specific issues are with the design of the rock and play. So maybe, Alan, you want to talk about that?
And it's not just the Fisher-Price Rock and Play; it's some other similar, comparable products as well.
Yeah, I was going to mention we've spoken specifically about Fisher-Price, but there are a number of manufacturers out there, as Dan mentioned, that appropriated designs. They may have come up with their own designs that are equally unsafe, some of which have been recalled, and that's something that the public should be aware about.
The Fisher-Price Rock and Play was designed to be a kind of infant or baby lounger, in which the baby's head would be elevated by the design of the product about 30 degrees above a flat surface. the original designer of the product, the woman who came up with the idea for Fisher-Price, thought this would be beneficial, particularly to babies who suffered from reflux, as Ed mentioned a little while earlier. However, she had no medical training. She was not a physician. She didn't consult with any pediatricians. She didn't even look at the recommendations that had existed for over a decade from the American Academy for Pediatrics, which said, do not place infants on an incline. It's unsafe. Why is it unsafe? Because of the position the baby can get himself or herself into. One, the baby's head, if it's on an incline, can slump forward. That's called a chin on chest position, and that can interfere with the baby's ability to breathe. Two, a baby can turn to the side, and if there is soft bedding or pads or other soft material that the baby's face can come into contact with, in a matter of seconds, literally, the baby can be prevented from breathing. And finally, a baby can roll over in an incline sleeper and have their face go into the plush bedding surface and again suffer suffocation.
And this is something that anybody who's brought a baby home from the hospital knows about. The instructions that you get, that all parents of newborns get, talk about supporting the head and keeping the head in alignment and not letting the head flop forward, because babies don't have developed muscles in their neck to lift their head in these types of situations. Their heads are very heavy compared to the rest of their body when you're talking about newborns in the 1 to 4 month old time frame. And that's where we've seen a cluster of these deaths occurring. I think the most recent count is 73 infant deaths in inclined sleepers.
And almost certainly more, because that number was reported some months ago, and the data about the number of deaths doesn't always emerge very quickly. It's a concern, and that there has been a trend of reporting fatalities occurring in these products over a period of time, and people are concerned that the numbers may only get worse, particularly if these products remain in the homes of consumers who have small infants and are using them.
And one of the other reasons why these numbers are almost certainly underreported is because oftentimes when an infant passes away in a situation like this, it's reported as SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. And so lots of times, especially in the cases that we've handled, almost all of the cases were initially reported as SIDS. And there wouldn't even be a reason in lots of the cases for people to look any further.
Excellent point. People were not even investigating whether the product had a role in causing an infant's death if they received a diagnosis of SIDS, a kind of unexplained death that could not be prevented. But when experts began looking at the deaths of infants in these inclined sleepers, they began to see patterns. They began to see that the incline could cause the child to get into one of these unfortunate positions, which could give rise to what's called positional asphyxia, which is a kind of suffocation. And the rock and play sleeper, as well as competitive models, is not flat. It does have an incline for the baby's head of about 30 degrees. It does have sidewalls and head support that are made of soft bedding material. And it has a restraint harness, which has also been recommended against. In fact, Ed, are you familiar with the recommendations made by probably one of the premier organizations when it comes to the safety of newborns and infants, the recommendations of the American Academy of Pediatrics?
The American Academy of Pediatrics has, as I think as we previously, as you previously mentioned, recommend first and principally placing a baby always, especially particularly a newborn, on his or her back in a crib or the bassinet, on a firm, flat mattress. The AAP specifically recommends against letting infants sleep in an incline position, which is exactly what this class of products does and how they are designed. Even the babies with reflux that Fisher-Price, at least the designer of the product, intended to help, the AAP recommends against placing those babies on an incline and says those babies are safe or safest when laid flat.
And Dan, I think you addressed this already, but I think that many American consumers are under the impression that most products, particularly products intended for babies, are tested by somebody. They're regulated in some fashion to make sure that they're safe before they're allowed to be sold. Lots of consumers have that expectation. This product couldn't be on the market. If it's dangerous, if Fisher-Price is making it and selling it all across America, it must be okay. But the truth is, as we know, there is no requirement for testing. The Consumer Product Safety Commission does not test products before they're marketed. In this country, it's up to the manufacturer to assume the moral and legal obligation to do the testing necessary to make sure that their products are not dangerous, are not hazardous, and that they're safe to use. And this is another example of how that system can fail. When a major manufacturer, a responsible manufacturer with a good reputation, puts out a product with virtually no testing at all, and it winds up causing the deaths of dozens and dozens of infants. We are not suggesting here that Fisher-Price intended to cause harm. We are suggesting that they had information about this product that they knew needed to be evaluated by experts. They knew that testing needed to be done. They even received reports, isn't it true, Dan, from some physicians about problems with the product that they effectively ignored.
Yeah, there were physicians who contacted Fisher-Price, attempting to warn them of dangers, and they were ignored. But I want to come back to something that you said. I think when we talk to people about what we do, and when we conduct mock trials on our cases, and we watch people who evaluate our cases for us, one thing that shines through is that people think, well, the government is doing this. The government's taking care of me. The government is approving, especially infant items. And in the other infant cases that we've handled, we've seen that time and again. And people need to know the government has almost no role out there in testing, evaluating, or approving products. It's only in very limited circumstances like this one, after tragedies occur, that it even comes to the Consumer Product Safety Commission, which is the part of the government that is responsible for eventually looking into infant mortality in products like this, that they're even involved. The other tragedy in this instance is that both Fisher-Price and the CPSC were aware of a score of infant deaths, I think more than 30, and had not alerted to the public to this significant health risk. And it was only by happenstance when there was information that was released by mistake to a magazine called Consumer Reports that ended up publishing the information that the scope of this problem became known.
Yeah, and that's important too. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, I think I would add that it's a significant loophole with the CPSC that the rules that they operate under prohibit them from releasing the name of manufacturers when they receive reports. And while the CPSC may know and the manufacturer gets notice of it, the general public never becomes aware of it. Another thing I think the general public would be shocked to learn is that the CPSC doesn't have the power to simply order a manufacturer to recall a product, even when it has identified the danger. It's a long and arduous process, and at the end of the day, it's really upon the manufacturer to take action when the CPSC comes knocking at the door and tells them they've got a dangerous product. And when they don't, it's a long process until a recall might occur, putting children and others at risk.
And what we've seen since the story broke in April of 2019 about the Fisher-Price number of deaths from the Fisher-Price rock and play is that there have been a number of other Incline Sleeper recalls, some of which had had deaths. Some of the Incline Sleepers, we represent a family whose child was killed in a Kiko Incline Sleeper that was part of a pack and play. It was obviously made for sleep because it was called the Napper. That item is still, that Incline Sleeper is still on the market. And people are buying that Incline Sleeper every day and putting their children at risk while using it, all the while probably thinking that this product has been tested and approved by the government, and maybe that this product is safer than all those other Incline Sleepers that have been recalled.
Yeah, it really is a problem, because while the government, through the Consumer Product Safety Commission, can encourage other manufacturers to recall products or make changes in them, it's a very difficult process for them to try to compel that. And it often takes years if they go down that road. To date, there have been a number of recalls of Incline Sleepers. In addition to Fisher-Price, these products have been recalled by companies like Kids 2, Durell, Graco, Evenflow, Summer Brands, Delta, and Colcraft. But as Dan just mentioned, there are other manufacturers that have refused to recall comparable products, leaving them available for sale at big box stores, at Amazon and other online retailers, even though they have been essentially shown to be dangerous products that don't really have a safe use or application.
One of the good news in this, though, is that several major retailers have made a commitment to stop selling inclined sleepers, such as Amazon, eBay, Walmart, and Bye Bye Baby. So it's interesting that the distributors have recognized that this is a problem, but yet it's the manufacturers who want to keep selling these dangerous devices and making a profit on them that are the ones that are injecting these really defective products into the stream of commerce.
And while it was in October of 2019 that the CPSC issued a warning and warned consumers to stop using this product, there have been many who pointed out that a warning, as opposed to a recall, is far less effective and much more easily ignored by consumers. And while people challenge even the efficacy of a recall, a warning is even less effective.
And as we know from our own cases, even a recall is hardly a panacea. For example, Fisher-Price recalled 4.7 million rock and play products in April of 2019. But the manner in which they carried out that recall leaves a lot to be desired. When some manufacturers recall a product, they offer a refund. They make it easy for consumers to return the product, destroy the product, and get their money back. Not so for Fisher-Price. What Fisher-Price did was said, we will give you a refund, but only if you have purchased this product within the past 6 months. If you've owned the product for longer than 6 months, we'll give you a voucher, a credit, to purchase another Fisher-Price product. That is not an effective way of getting dangerous products that can cause harm, even kill babies, off the market. There are better ways to recall a product, and Fisher-Price knows how to do it if they wanted to do it.
And so as a result of all of this, there are millions and millions of these products out there in homes, in daycare centers, at grandparents' houses where they don't have a crib, but they have room for one of these small storage devices and might be watching a baby during the day. They're everywhere. They have to be taken out of people's homes, but because of the ineffectiveness of the recall for the products that have been recalled, there's still going to be deaths that occur.
That is true. And in addition to recalling products, strike that. In addition to recalls that are not particularly effective, there's another thing that some manufacturers have done that we have experienced in our own cases that is really bothering me. And that is to effectively blame the parents when bad things happen to their children for the defects in their own product. They will say, and Fisher-Price has said, these products should be used not for extended sleep, but on their own packaging. They encourage the use of the product for sleeping for extended periods of time. Fisher-Price has said that the product can only be safely used with a certain harness or restraint strap that's provided. But they know through a survey they took that many parents simply don't use that strap. They're not even aware of how it's to be used, and the instruction for using the strap is on the bottom of the product, where many parents or caregivers will never see it. So we need to get away from this notion of blaming parents for deficiencies in a product's design. Products need to be designed to be safe for use by people who are using them in a normal and expected fashion. And if you use a product in a normal and expected fashion, it should not have a side effect of causing injury or even death to an infant.
I share your disgust when manufacturers blame parents, particularly when a manufacturer uses an all too common line that this product is safe if it was used as intended, when there's absolute evidence to the contrary.
Another one of the problems in the way that recalls happen is the communication with parents who have purchased the product. You know, we live in a time now where many, if not most of these products are purchased either over the internet or at stores where people have a special account, and it is incredibly easy for the manufacturers to reach out to purchasers if they have an email address or a cell phone number, to let them know that a product has been recalled and they should stop using it and they should bring it in for a refund. And from what we've seen in other cases is this is never done. And what it appears to us to be is that manufacturers make a decision to recall a product, and then they basically just want to keep the numbers as low as possible in order to have as much of a cost savings as possible. And the result of that is obviously that many more of these products remain in use than should be. And that is another tragic part of this set of facts that is really driven only by economic concerns, by the desire to turn a profit, and basically the desire to turn a profit on a product that a manufacturer knows is defective because they've admitted it as part of the recall.
We want to give special recognition to some consumer advocacy organizations that have really made a difference in spreading the word about the dangers of not only incline sleepers, but other unsafe products for children and infants. Groups like organizations like Consumer Reports, which Dan mentioned earlier, that really broke the story about the number of fatalities associated with incline sleepers, have done terrific work to alert the public about products that are dangerous. The Consumer Federation of America, Kids in Danger, and other organizations have been doing what the government has not been doing. That is to alert the public about products that simply haven't been tested and aren't safe to use. In terms of what's being done right now, Most products in the United States are not subject to mandatory standards. They're subject to voluntary standards that are put together by manufacturers, consumer organizations, government agencies, and that's what's been happening with the Incline Sleepers as well. There is a voluntary standard, but it's weak, and it doesn't adequately or properly regulate these devices according to these consumer organizations and pediatric groups. So right now, the CPSC has proposed a new mandatory standard that would effectively eliminate incline sleepers from the marketplace by saying that you can't sell a product that has an elevation angle of more than 10 degrees. However, as that regulation makes its way through the bureaucracy, there are companies, as Dan mentioned, that will continue to sell the products. We should also mention that there has been legislation introduced in Congress. It's passed the House. It's pending in the Senate that would effectively outlaw incline sleepers.
One of the other things that we've seen in these cases, having represented a lot of families who have lost their infants and their children and their toddlers, is the tremendous guilt and self-blame that goes on that keeps parents silent about the cause. And for people who that has happened to or who know somebody that has happened to, it's very important that those families contact the CPSC, make a report, contact an attorney to give some oxygen to this story to prevent future tragedies like this from occurring.
And in terms of what we do as trial lawyers, Ed, let's talk a little bit about what remedies might be available to a family who has had a child that suffered harm as a result of an unsafe product like an incline sleeper.
The law that is probably most applicable to these kind of cases is strict product liability cases. This is a product, this class of products are products that have to be designed to be safe for their intended use. And if they can't be used safely, they shouldn't be used at all. They should never be marketed. They should never be sold. So there are strict product liability laws in almost every state in this country, and certainly in Pennsylvania and other states. There are also negligence claims that can be brought depending on the jurisdiction that you're in. And those claims go to the heart of the manufacturer's conduct in failing to properly design and test the product. With respect to what a parent should do that has an incline sleeper in their home, I think the first thing and most important thing is stop using it, get rid of it, contact the manufacturer, see if there has been a recall for that particular product. Alan went over a list of some of the manufacturers that have recalled it before. If you see your neighbors using it, if you see your child's daycare has it, make sure you tell them as well that it's not a safe product, to not place children in it, spread the word, make people aware of it.
If you want to know what your rights are in the event that you or someone you know has had a child suffer harm as a result of an unsafe product, feel free to call really any lawyer that specializes in these kinds of cases. We're here and willing to talk to you and answer any questions from any part of the country about families that have incline sleepers or other potentially unsafe products. And if you want to just have a conversation about what your rights are, what remedies are available, we'll be happy to speak with you. Thank you for joining us, folks, and we will see you next time.